My friends, let me tell you a secret that is no secret at all. I am the subject of my book. Not because I am especially admirable, nor because my life is filled with events worth recording. On the contrary, I write about myself because I know myself better than I know anything else, and even in that, I am barely competent. But I have found this, that if I can understand myself honestly, with all my faults, doubts, contradictions, and pleasures, I might come a little closer to understanding what it means to be human. You see, my thoughts are not crafted in stone, nor sewn with golden thread. They are like me, unfinished, lopsided, walking in circles. But they are mine, and I have come to believe that this simple possession, one's own mind, one's own life, is a treasure far too many people neglect in their scramble for approval, reputation, or immortality. Let us walk a while together, and I shall share with you what I have discovered, not from divine revelation or academic study, but from living. I have read the philosophers, yes. I have read Plato, Seneca, Aristotle, and more. But I have also read myself. And in the long hours of illness, the quiet afternoons in my library, the smells of the fields around my tower, I have found that philosophy lives not in arguments, but in being. When I speak of knowing oneself, I do not mean that polished version of the self we show to our neighbors or employers. I mean the rough and uncut figure that yawns in the morning, that speaks foolishly when offended, that becomes bored by virtue and envious of fools. I have caught myself pretending to understand things I do not. I have seen myself argue for a position I barely believed, simply because I liked the sound of my voice. I have betrayed my own principles to avoid discomfort, and I have clung to my vanity like a miser to his coins. And yet, I do not hate myself for it. I observe, and I smile. It is a great gift to see oneself without condemnation. The priests tell us to confess to God, but I say, confess to yourself first. You may be surprised how often you are both judge and criminal, and how difficult it is to sentence oneself without hypocrisy. We are not made to be consistent. One day I find pleasure in solitude. The next I long for company. I admire courage, and yet I feel cowardly. I praise reason, and then follow my impulses like a cat after a string. But here is the beauty. This is not failure. It is life. The human soul is not a fortress, but a sea, vast, deep, and constantly in motion. I know nothing. This is not false modesty. It is the wisest thing I have ever said. When I examine myself truly, I find my judgments built upon sand. I am led more by habit than by reason, more by appetite than principle, and this again is not shameful. It is natural. What is shameful is to insist on our knowledge when we are blind, to clothe ignorance in dogma, to weaponize belief. There is no opinion I have held for more than 10 years that I have not questioned. I see in others a hunger for certainty, but I see also the violence that such certainty brings. Wars, persecutions, inquisitions, all built upon the conviction that one is right and the other wrong. What if we simply said, I do not know? It is astonishing how freeing those words are. Not knowing does not mean not thinking. It means allowing room for wonder, curiosity, conversation. Let your opinions be like your clothes, comfortable, useful, and easy to change when they no longer fit. Now, let me speak of death, not to frighten you, but to liberate you. I have lived much of my life with illness, often uncertain whether I would survive the next season. And I have found that nothing sharpens one's love of life so much as knowing how easily it can end. Death is not a punishment. It is a partner. It walks beside us, invisible, yet ever present. Every kiss you give, every bite you take, every song you hum is precious only because you will not hum forever. To fear death is to live halfway. I do not recommend thinking of it constantly, nor of staging heroic meditations in graveyards. No, but let its presence whisper softly in your ear, "Today is yours. Do not waste it." The moment you truly believe that you will die, you begin to live as if you are alive. I have tasted the joys of food, of wine, of conversation, of naps in the afternoon. I have laid in bed on cold mornings and refused to rise. I have done so with delight. And I say this not to encourage laziness, but to remind you, life is made of such things. We are often told to deny ourselves, by philosophers, by priests, by fashion. They say suffering builds character. Perhaps, but I say, so does joy. Doubt the companies in stand, in mottering, in histrionics. The secret is not in denial but in moderation. Eat slowly, drink with appreciation, love with tenderness, speak with warmth, laugh with sincerity. These are the small pleasures that, strung together, form the necklace of a good life. It is easier to fast than to eat moderately, easier to remain silent than to speak well. But the art of living is to balance pleasure with reflection, instinct with judgment. I have no desire to live forever, but I wish while I live, to live well. Friendship is one of the few things in life that makes the suffering worthwhile. I have had friends with whom I could share silence comfortably. That, I believe, is the test of a true companion. Not how well they speak, but how gently they let you be. A friend is not a mirror, but a window, one through which you see another soul, and perhaps, by some miracle, come to understand your own a little better. The deepest friendship I have known was with a man named Labotie. He died young. I mourn him still. But I do not regret the pain his absence causes me, because the joy his presence gave me was greater. Seek friends not by usefulness, but by affection. Let the bond be free of purpose, expectation, transaction. A friend should not complete you, but rather accompany you, like a good coat in the winter, not flashy, but warm and reliable. Books are my companions, my comfort, and often my correction. But let me warn you, reading is not wisdom. It is only raw material. A man may be stuffed with knowledge and still be a fool. The test of reading is whether it teaches you how to live, not whether you can quote Cicero at dinner. I read not to accumulate facts, but to challenge myself, to find another voice in the room when my own becomes tiresome. I read Montaigne not because I agree with him, but because he gives me someone to argue with at midnight. If you find yourself reading only those who agree with you, beware. You may be shrinking rather than growing. Education, too, must be human. Teach children not just what to know, but how to doubt, to think, to feel, to question. Teach them not to become scholars, but people. I am vain. I admit it. I like the sound of my own voice, the shape of my writing, the cleverness of my thoughts. But I do not let this vanity rule me. I laugh at it. I observe it. I use it as one might use a flawed tool, with care. You too are vain. We all are. It is the wax that seals our letters to the world. But vanity becomes toxic when it demands applause, when it builds its castle on the judgment of others. Seek not admiration. Seek self-acceptance. If you can sit alone in a room and feel content, not because the world loves you, but because you are enough, then you are wiser than most kings.
You may ask, but what is the use of writing if it is so full of error? I ask in return, what is the use of living if we are so full of contradiction? We write because it helps us think. We live because we are born. And in both we find beauty, even in the chaos. I write like I speak, like I breathe,
without polish, without structure, sometimes without much sense. But I do it with sincerity. I do not hide behind grand arguments. I offer you myself and say, here I am. Judge if you like, but remember, you too are made of the same crooked timber. Let us then write, not as orators, but as human beings. Write as one would speak to a friend over wine, or mutter to oneself while watching rain fall. And if you find, in those words, a moment of clarity, then I have done something worth doing. In the end, dear listener, I offer you no system, no method, no golden rule, only this: live with curiosity, live with tenderness, live with yourself. Do not seek to be perfect, seek to be whole. Do not chase immortality, chase mornings worth remembering. Be slow to judge, quick to laugh, and gentle with your own madness. Your life is your essay. Rewrite it often, cross out what no longer fits, add margins, make notes, and above all, read it with love. If you should stumble, as I often have, smile, stand up, and mutter, "Ah, Montaigne would understand." Farewell, and may your days be full of honest thought and quiet joy. Are you truly living life to the fullest? I'd love to hear in the comments. What practices help you get the most out of each day?